Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about riffs? Sometimes talking about some of our favorite riffs from our favorite records. I am one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, Justin Swindle, Dylan Adams. Justin Swindle, Dylan Adams, how are we?
I'm doing all right. It's been a while. It has been a minute since the three of us have been here together.
Just us together, alone. Yeah, we had a wonderful episode last week with some guests. Episode 100 with Nate Garrett, Spirit Adrift, Neon Nightmare, Sanford Parker, producer extraordinaire, Buried at Sea, Minsk, what was the other one? Black Cross Hotel, Nocmistium, a bunch of bands. We talked about Voices of Omens, The Return of Magic. The new Wake record is out now. Dylan went to the show.
I did.
That was 2 episodes ago.
That was right? two episodes ago.
He definitely went in the last one.
Yep. Show was great. Played the whole album front to back. It's fucking great to see a band like that in a really tiny venue. Shit was a lot of fun. Had my first instance of getting recognized, which is kind of terrifying in the best way possible. You're that guy, right? You're that guy. You host the Riff Soup podcast, Riff Worship. You almost got Austin was a really nice guy.
I love that broccoli cheddar episode y'all did.
Austin was really nice and took the time to talk to me. So especially that being like album release show number 1 was something. It was really nice. Great band, great fucking live band. If you get a chance to ever see Wake, which I've had the chance of seeing them 3 times, do it. Great band.
I've gotten recognized once and I thought I was in trouble. I was like, how do you know me? It is weird when you're just
usually
out in public.
I just scamper away like someone's flipped the lights on with cockroaches.
Yeah.
Someone says your name in public, you're like, that's not me.
I ain't him. No,
and when you have something like this that's kind of recognizable, it's like, oh no.
There are people that I see in public that I know that I like. If I know them and am friends with them, I'll like just be like, oh God, I can't talk to them right now. So I can't even imagine if someone was like, hey, I see you on the YouTubes.
Do you know how many bushels of bananas I've dove behind at the grocery store because someone that works for me or with me has like been in the same? It's just like, yeet, just out.
You should find the you got to find the cantaloupe section, bud. That'll be easier.
Just blend. Don't want someone like sticking their thumb on me trying to see how firm it is.
Well, we know you got the soft spot still.
It's like Uncle Phil with jazz, just yeet, flying out. Just
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're both doing so well, especially after listening to the 2 EPs that we're talking about today.
I haven't listened to any recently. I haven't listened to any EPs.
I agree with Swindle on this one.
I've had this idea for a while to talk about this band, talk about their discography, because yes, it's long, but there really isn't a lot when you really dissect it. So instead of picking one or the other, we're just going to do kind of like a 2-part series on the band Burning Witch. And so this first part that we're going to do today is going to kind of be more designated to the band's history. We might touch on, some of the sounds and the music that we've heard. And then in the following part, we're touching on it. We're going to touch on Crippled Lucifer, the compilation.
Crippled Lucifer.
Crippled Lucifer that was released by Southern Lord in 1998. I believe that was their second release ever. The first being Thor's Hammer that we touched in a very
no,
gross.
Long.
Whoa!
What?
Yeah,
he didn't even catch it.
No. You said the Thor's Hammer that we touched in a very trailed off.
We did an episode on Thor's hammer forever ago.
We sure did.
Before I was even part of the
That's
show.
very true.
It was like one of our first episodes that we did, and we'll go into that a little bit. But yeah, if you want to like go into a dissection of that EP, Dama Dagsnot, that's like way forever ago. But Burning Witch, how do you guys know Burning Witch? Have you spent much time with this band at all? Swindle, Dylan, whoever wants to start first.
Never heard of her.
Dylan, Burning Witch.
So, I said this off air. Obviously, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of Greg and Steven's like other bands. I think we all are with Canate and Goatsnake and Sun and all of those like Southern Lord bands and everything, right? I have gotten this band confused for so many years with Goatsnake, because Goatsnake kind of has like that rock and roll kind of swing. And like when you started talking about doing this, I was like, fuck, all right, yes, let's do it. Because they're involved in so many bands.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't wait. And then I realized which one it was. I was like, all right, this is one I'm not as familiar with. But I'd say the first time I heard Burning Witch, there's a documentary that I've watched every few years or so, kind of on like stoner and doom metal, not to be confused with the Slow Southern Steel documentary that CT did. But it's been on YouTube for like a decade, and I'll watch it every so often. I think that's where I became familiar with Burning Witch, was through that and all those like California bands and of this subgenre. But ended up not being as familiar with this band as I thought I had. But it's something.
Even though you bought the record twice on accident.
So I bought each individual EP thinking they were both Goatsnake releases.
Sorry, you didn't buy any EPs. EPs were not purchased.
I do not disagree with that.
We'll get into it.
I bought them thinking they were Goatsnake EPs and listened to them and went, all right, I done messed up. Baby done a bad thing.
Yeah, they re-released these two EPs, Towers, Rift.Canyon.Dreams, a few years ago. They had been like long out of print, so Southern Lord took the opportunity to kind of like put them back out there, and they look great. I think they originally released them like kind of in a box set. You could still get them via Bandcamp or Southern Lord. They look great. But yeah, I would say that this was not a band that I was all too familiar with for a long time as well. Like I knew about Sun. I'd even dove more into like Thor's Hammer, and through that, then went on through the discography of all these different bands, the timeline into Burning Witch. It's funny to see that like their first two projects, really at the time, no one gave a fuck about, and then like later on, becoming as popular and as lauded as they are, because neither of them really, they didn't release anything while they were active. That came later, but now we're kind of spoiled with all this music that's out there and all these like, you know, different releases and reissues and all that shit. But
I love the quotes that are like, everybody fucking hated us. Like I would look out at the crowd and people would be either confused or scared or angry just at us playing.
My favorite quote was like Edgy 59, who is a character that we will dive into. I think he at one point,
it's like Wino.
Oh, 100%.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, we'll get there. But he says like, it wasn't often that we would get to play our full set. Like, but it was, yeah.
Some dude in the back of like the bar with a big switch, or like, what is it? The old like theater cane, like pulling them off the stage. Like,
yeah.
You guys are done. That song started 36 minutes ago and it hasn't ended. Like, come on. It's fucking wild to know that three of the people involved in the early portion of this band being in Thor's Hammer, dealing with very similar shit. Albeit that band even seems like it was more well received than this one. One show, roughly.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into that. Thor's Hammer, they were basically, you know, a very short-lived project. They were only together from like 6-7 weeks, give or take.
Yeah.
In that time, they played 2 shows. They recorded a demo and they recorded an EP, Damek Dagsnatt, which is Norwegian for Doomsday Night. I'm sure I pronounced the actual Norwegian pronunciation bad. So it's like really roughly like 3 songs that they put out. I love that Decibel did like a Hall of Fame on that like a few years ago. I still have it. But yeah, by the time that band was broken up, you know, they'd moved off. Like they have the singer Runhild Gammelsater, who was like a 17-year-old Norwegian exchange student who like Steven had met out at a show. I forget the name of the band or the venue that they were met each other at, but they really hit it off. And, you know, Steven had been long involved with zines, the big one being like Descent, where he was like interviewing death and black metal bands. You know, Greg, I believe, was a little bit older, but he was like kind of heavily into maybe like the hard rock and like the early heavy metal, more traditional stuff that had come before. But you essentially have this band, very short-lived, 6-7 weeks. They break up because Runhild goes back to Norway, finished her schooling, or wanted to continue it back home. And so the cassette for that wouldn't be released until like 96, 98. But 3 members of Thor's Hammer, Stephen O'Malley, Greg Anderson, and Jamie Boggy Sykes would go on to form Burning Witch.
I really enjoy that Thor's Hammer release a lot. Like I thoroughly enjoy that a lot. I'm being serious. Like I thoroughly enjoy that release a lot.
It is much shorter.
And it is very much, it's almost half. It's a third of this release we all listened to be honest. But you could definitely see kind of the blending of the different sounds that is this project moving forward, because, and there's a different sound in both EPs we're going over today. Like there's one obviously sounds like closer to a hard rock release in a very stretched out way, whereas the second one just sounds like a Doom Drone record. I think you've kind of got those, you've got those half notes in the first EP, like that kind of hard rock Sabbath blues scale kind of thing. Whereas the second one is, all right, brace yourself, Gertie.
Burning Witch kind of forms in 95, Seattle, Washington. I mentioned those 3 people, Stephen, Greg, Jamie. You also have bassist G. Stuart Dahlquist, or G. Subharmonium, as he is sometimes credited on some of these releases. Apparently, Stuart had known Greg previously with Thor's Hammer, being involved in the Seattle scene. Actually, Stuart was in a band by the name of Hungry Crocodiles that was much different. It was a funk metal ska fusion. Think like early Red Hot Chili Peppers, obviously very
Faith No More
popular at the time. Yeah, Faith No More. He was in this band with his brother Adam. Stuart played bass and trombone. They apparently had a very
at the same time. Yeah.
Kind of it was the Rush thing, right? It's bass and trombone.
Same analogy I was going to make.
They apparently had quite the following in Seattle. And I was listening to an interview with Stuart just before we did this, where he said that like they had been like kind of courted by some labels, and MCA was actually going to sign them to like a pretty big multi-record deal. They drove down to, I would assume, LA or wherever MCA is located. I think they went out and had like this crazy time. There's like a whole thing with like a mattress that they put on top of the van. They pissed on it. Listen to this. It's a wild story. But by the time they spent a night there, they go into MCA. Apparently in the night that they were there, they go to the studio, or they go to the record label. Sony had purchased MCA within the night, and they fired everybody, and they were like, "You don't have. Why are you here? Your deal's gone. Like, we don't know who you are. It's over." So
damn,
had no deal.
That's how it happened.
Yeah,
to a lot of bands.
Apparently, So Stuart goes back to Seattle. I think Hungry Crocodiles had probably, I don't know if it existed while Burning Witch was there, but
They got full.
Boo. Stuart also, I don't know if he owned or worked at like an auto restoration shop. There was a bar up the street called Moe's that.
What's the matter, Homer?
The Flamin' Moe. He was at Moe's. He ran into these guys and they had got to talking, and apparently Stuart had his gear set up at the auto shop. So they basically went back and just kind of jammed it out. And Stuart said that he had already kind of delved into low tuning, so they just kind of began playing Burning Witch stuff. The most interesting character, I think, from this band might be Edgemont Martin, otherwise known as Edgy 59. There is an interview with the sleep shaman, or I think is it sleeping shaman, or it's the sleep shaman? I can't remember. There's an interview that I based a lot of my information on from like 2010 that goes pretty in depth with this time and all future Edgy 59 projects. Just any general takes on what you read so far before I get into it?
What I want to say is, if this is Edgy 59, I don't think I want to meet the other 58, the ones before him.
It's going to be one of those, huh?
I'll say this. To me, he's the most interesting part of the band. Hands down, how he sounds, everything. There are a lot of people during this time frame, this kind of late Gen X, early Gen X age group that dealt with a lot of these things and kind of went through different highs and lows in their lives. And sometimes it does make for really good stories, because you wouldn't get a wino, right? You wouldn't get someone like that without going through a lot of this stuff, because that character doesn't exist without going through all this. But I did want to bring up the delving into low tunings thing. We all have played music in various forms. We've all listened to bands that were proto heavy metal bands, or started tuning low, or did tune low, or bands that tuned down so low the strings are falling off the neck. That's a quote from the Thor's Hammer episode we did. But it is so funny to think that bands back in the early 90s were still going, yeah, we were just experimenting with low tunings. Because now it's just like, hey, we're going to tune to G. Like, okay, cool. We're tuning the G. Like, it's nothing new. But back then, like, tuning to A, like a drop A, was fucking wild to think about.
I mean, we're not going to get too much in this episode into like the records. We're not talking about them on this episode, but I told y'all in our group chat that it sounds like a witch from an episode of Scooby-Doo is like singing over top of the fucking songs.
There's a couple tracks where, mainly Sea Hag on Towers.
Yeah.
Where like I genuinely thought it's like when the Wicked Witch of the West gets like covered
Right,
in water. It's like, like it sounds like that curdle of like the voice. Tunings are important for sure. Greg mentioned in a quote that it's kind of funny how like most of the bands, give or take, had like used the same tuning. All the attitudes are roughly different, but the tuning was kind of consistent from the days in Thor's Hammer up to like Sun. So I did find that kind of pretty unique as well. But even with that, Stephen, for maybe all of the differences that these people have with each other, Stephen O'Malley did say, my personal opinion is that Edgy's vocals were the most important part of Burning Witch. He gave it an unsettling and bizarre, inhuman chill.
Yes, it's there. I mean, I think Swindle even brought up kind of off air that there's definitely some black metal, kind of old school, like early wave, first or second wave black metal kind of influence to Edgy's vocals, which I do like a lot. Is like weirdly different as they are. They fit pretty well with this music. It sounds like a blending of so many different things. And I know he discusses his influences. And the minute he said them, I went, that's absolutely what I would think. But he kind of sounds like the vocalist from Sirathungal a lot to me. He sounds like Blaine Cook, the original I think it's Blaine Cook, the original vocalist of The Accused to me. Like this kind of like nasally kind of snarl that he's got. But I also hear his other influences is there, but he also does his own thing. Like there's point on here where he's doing techniques that probably no one else would have really thought of. You might have even heard in like a death metal track. But it's the center point to every one of these songs to me is his vocals.
Yeah. The two biggest ones he mentions for sure, Kirk Fisher, Buzz Oven, which, before we really get into his backstory is, he grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he was like around the Buzz Oven crew and even talked about kind of hanging out in the Morbid Angel house before they had moved.
Bonkers.
Yeah. So they like lived there. I don't know. I think he said that they lived there after they had moved on to Florida. And so there's like a lot of stories apparently from him hanging out in that scene. But Kirk being one of the main influences, and of course, one consistent that he mentions all through his career is Black Sabbath. Totally, completely obsessed. I think he even said in one quote that he'd listen to Ozzy or Black Sabbath and think that he was talking like directly to him. So yeah, those are all like, there's so many influences that he kind of mentions. Another one that being like kind of a pivotal experience for Edgy, being Kiss, seeing Kiss. His mother took him to see Kiss on the 1978 Love Gun tour. That was kind of like the lights went off as well. Yeah, I get it.
At least it wasn't like the Dynasty tour or the Elder or something that.
Yeah.
This is the same era though, right?
This is like the last record before that
Yeah.
kind of kicks off. So that being a big one. He also mentions Tangerine Dream, Stratosphere being like a huge influence. So there's like all this kind of like more synth based, like electronic music, ambient, which, maybe not like a direct, you can point it out, but, I'm sure that kind of funnels through. He mentions like in that same quote on influences that like maybe you don't hear it directly, but it kind of influences a person's character and like how they would approach their own sort of music, which I totally get. But yeah, he'd been playing music from a young age. I think he mentioned that he like sung in the local, boy choir, which he hated. And then he started playing piano, which he has, continuously throughout his life. But he started a band around 1985. This project was called Mindwork. And they basically he quit school and they kind of just went on the road. And he mentions that they were able to like manage a tour throughout the US like in a year with no budget or resources. But kind of like we mentioned earlier, nobody liked it. Everybody hates it. This was more, I do find it interesting being, being into like all of these different projects that are more like heavy metal and kind of rock based. This was more like improv kind of exploratory electronic music. So definitely just the weirdest shit. I have listened to there's nothing recorded that I've heard. They apparently recorded all the time, never released anything. But there are some projects later that I listened to that are just like fucking bonkers. Like it's so weird.
It's like that fucking Aaron Turner thing where he said he played that show with Coalesce that they just like smashed hammers on concrete and shit.
This kind of continues. Like he kind of, so I mentioned he quit school, so he kind of moves around a little bit here. He moved to New York City first. Apparently started working on some string quartet compositions and symphonic music. He still worked on noise, but it's kind of all over the place. It doesn't really seem like, I don't know if there's necessarily focus. He's just kind of trying everything, which is, certainly cool. He did this for a few years and then he moved to Seattle in 1994. And that's kind of where we start to meet up with everybody. At first, he said he was working on his own stuff. He started doing the electronic sound as well. But it wasn't until he was shopping for guitars in Seattle at like a used instrument dealer. He met Dub David Black, and they started to start a noise rock project together called Junk Halo. They also did this with Pat Gray, who is a friend of David's. He owned private radio studios in the area, which is where Burning Witch would record their first demo. So they began playing some shows under that name. I think they had somewhat of a following because they eventually played with like Boris and a couple other projects. But also during this time, Edgy mentions that his like heroin addiction was pretty severe, and it kind of alienated him from his bandmates. So it seemed like that project was probably on the outs.
It's in the name. It's there.
Yep.
It's there for sure. This was the late 80s, early 90s in the Pacific Northwest. Yep. It seems like it hit everybody.
Yeah.
Krusties too.
Yeah. Junk Halo is a weird project. I wasn't sure what I was going to expect. There's like a SoundCloud, like somebody put it up on SoundCloud. You can hear it. I think they said it's like right from the DAT tape, and it's like very noisy, experimental. It's got some of that like slap bass kind of. It's like honestly just bonkers. I was like listening through it. There's a few songs, so you can definitely check it out. But very, very, very unique, very interesting, to say the least.
Avant-garde, I believe.
That's there you go.
What the kids say.
So Stuart comes back into this equation with the car shop. Edgy mentions that he was working on his car out in his driveway. Stuart actually lived up the street from him, and he liked my car, and we began a friendship. So I guess he had I had an old Studebaker, and he was one of the only guys around that could work on it. We talked about music a little, and I told him about a Junk Halo show I had coming up, and this is where I mentioned they were playing with Boris. So Stuart took Greg and Steven to go see the show, and I guess they were just kind of impressed. They struck up a conversation, and within that week, everybody was kind of playing together already.
The last Junk Halo show.
What did Arnold's grandfather Phil drive in Hey Arnold? Was it a Studebaker or a Packard?
I think it's a Packard.
Okay, because the minute I saw Studebaker in like the last couple of days I've looked at this, my head just kept going to that fucking car. Like Steely Phil just behind the wheel. Hey, Mr. Hawk Tooie, why you keep spitting on us?
Last Junk Halo show, they start jamming together. Edgy mentions that he had heard Thor's hammer, but not like really listened to him. He said he didn't really care for the low vocals, I guess, low guttural vocals. Which, I guess to each their own. I personally like that project a lot, but he can,
You hear that, Edgy?
Yeah, if you're listening to this. So they start playing together. Soon after forming the band, Greg Anderson basically leaves. He relocates to Los Angeles in like 96, where he then starts Goatsnake, and then a few years later he begins Southern Lord Recordings. But yeah, he leaves before they actually record any material. So before the demo, before any of that stuff.
It's fucking remarkable too, because his hands are kind of all over this band and release, and he's kind of viewed as being synonymous with this project, even though he was only in it a very short time.
Like a blip.
And Steve's been in this band the entire time.
And it seemed, was it Edgy?
Mm-hmm.
Like he didn't even like him. He was once this guy left the band, like we stopped fighting with each other. Like it seemed like this guy was the reason we were at odds with each other.
And personalities are wild too, because strong personalities are going to clash all the time. And Greg definitely seems like he's in charge of a lot of everything that he does, bands, projects, his label, everything like that. I don't know this guy from Adam, but it definitely seems like when you've got a lot of A-type personality traits all in the same group, sometimes it can be a problem. Sometimes it works really well. But I did like Edgy's take of like, yeah, they got some of the bluesy stuff out of this, which I thought was really funny because like, as I said at the beginning of this, like the first EP has some of those traits to it.
It has some of it in there. So I wonder if I was curious just because, he is not on any of the recorded material, like how much actual input did he have on the songwriting, and then what did they keep, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'd be interested to know if anyone's out there and knows of that. I would definitely be Curious to know how much input he had on the songwriting before he left. But yeah, he definitely mentions that they did not get along, but there are some other quotes where he's like, he respects the hell out of Greg for just like his input on the scene, like kind of starting like the, drone and doom, scenes here in America, having such an influence on that. Maybe not starting him, but just in what we know them today with Southern Lord and his various projects. You can't really have it the way we know it without Greg or Steven. Also the fact that this band we're talking about it now is largely due in part because Steven and Greg were able to kind of orchestrate some of these reissues and some of the partnerships they did with the labels later on. So one thing I did
they
find
had a split release together.
They did have a split release together.
That's funny too.
Yeah. I love that. Like after you break up in 96, 4 years later, your song ends up on a split. I love that. So what can you guys tell me about the lyrics? Anything?
Lyrics?
No, not really. There's maybe 3 songs that are the exception. You can find lyrics on them, but for the most part, they were never published. I don't believe they were in any sort of, inner sleeve there's just nothing there. This was intentional. They wrote all the music together, but Edgy did all of the lyrics. A lot of them were improvised during rehearsal and practice, and then he would kind of go back and, try to kind of finalize them and restructure them and shape them up. But for the most part, they're all just improving lyrics in the rehearsal space.
Hey man, Obituary did it. Like, I know this is 2 different types of music, but Obituary, like I think John's the vocalist in Obituary. Could be wrong.
John Tardy.
There's a couple tracks in Slowly We Rot. I don't think he's got vocals like lyrics at all. Seriously, it's just him like roaring into a mic.
We've been in bands like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you can make it work and it sounds good, like fucking go for it. It's extreme music. Like, yeah. I mean, we're all fans of varying types of extreme music. And like, I've been listening to death metal for 20 years. Even at this point, I'm like, I have no fucking clue what they're saying half the time.
I mean, we talk about it all the time where like, even if it is published shit, like we probably don't even really know the lyrics. It's more of an instrument thing. And like, I would say it works more on a level for me for this band as well, where you hear like those like kind of really like gnarly, just fucking vocal takes on these records. He talks about the themes of like the lyrics as being like kind of stories and fables, where the others are kind of like more straight from his own experiences. But yeah, if you could, I don't think you can find anything. I tried to listen along, but for the most part, it's just kind of, it is what it is.
I heard, I don't remember which one it is at this point, but I remember one of them that stuck out was like something about telling somebody his deepest fears. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the Dewey Cox and Elvis bit. The fuck did he just say?
It's also hard to remember 90 minutes worth of lyrics. 95 minutes.
Well, to be fair, Swindle, there's probably 4 minutes worth of lyrics on this whole thing. And I'm referring to it as one because that's how it's released now. It's a compilation. And like there's I don't know. I mean, there's lyrics for sure, but based on like the lyrics to music ratio, itty bitty. little lyrics.
Speaking of music, they release their first demo 96, in September of that year. Self-released, has the 4 members that we mentioned: Stuart, Steven, Edgy, and Jamie. It was recorded by Pat Gray, who we mentioned earlier from Edgy's former band Junk Halo. It was recorded on 1-inch tape at Private Radio in Ballard, Washington. Southern Lord did re-release this digitally. I think it maybe came as like a download code if you ordered like I think one of the compilations. I could be wrong on that, but it had the demo itself, and then also had like a recording of a live performance at the Pioneer Theater in Seattle, So they did that digital release in like 2008. It features like mostly songs from Towers on it as well. The first EP, Towers, which was recorded in March of 96. They kind of, the weird little quote on, if you go on like Bandcamp and stuff, it says recorded during the vernal equinox 1996 at Robert Lang Studios in Seattle. I think it's like
fake.
March 20th.
Lied.
Yeah, late March 96, apparently. It was originally released as a demo tape and then would later be released by Slap-A-Ham on vinyl in
Gonna
98.
slap that hog, cooking up a Filipino box spring hog. Sorry.
I'm just imagining they're calling the guy trying to book studio dates, and they got the fucking Farmer's Almanac out because this is like pre-internet days, and they're like, shit, what day is the fucking vernal equinox again? That's when we need to record.
Honestly, the way this is kind of put together seems very much like the Thor's Hammer shit, just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. This EP was recorded by, of course, Steve Albini. The very first time that Steven recorded with Steve, because he would later do Life Metal with Sun many years later, he had basically flown to Seattle to record with a band called Silkworm, who I believe Steve had known because they were originally from Missoula, Montana, but then they had moved to Seattle. They were friends. And also Michael Dahlquist, who is the drummer of Silkworm, was also the brother of Stuart Dahlquist, who is in Burning Witch. So Stephen kind of mentions, I was in a band called Burning Witch, and our bass player Stuart was brothers with the drummer. It was like, oh, Steve can come up a few days early. Do you want to record with him? He had flown from Seattle, or he had flown to Seattle from London, where he had just worked with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant on their new album.
Oh my God, that travesty of a record.
So he had
the Page Plant. Oh
yeah. So kind of a wild thing where, I mean, Steve Albini doing that in general is pretty wild.
Yes.
But to go straight from London to Seattle to record a band called Burning Witch, like the contrast of that is pretty insane.
Nothing more Albini than that. Like going, oh yeah, I just recorded this like probably platinum selling act of yesteryear to a band that's going to sell 4 copies at their next show with 2 people showing up.
Right.
You know, now that I think about it, about that Plant and Page album, we know from Steve's recording in utero that he would prank call Gene Simmons or Eddie Vedder. Who do y'all think Plant Page and Steve Albini were in a room prank calling?
Fucking David Gilmour.
God, I hope so.
Calling Iomi, going, what are you doing? Like just fucking with the Riff Lord, you know? That's fucking bonkers to know that we all know Albini's produced so much, right? But just hearing that he was like, yeah, I was just in the UK recording these guys that helped create heavy metal, essentially, and now I'm recording a band that sounds more like a heavy metal band than anything for probably $4, you know?
Yeah. It just total, like, he was there to record a completely different band, and we're just like, yeah, no, he's a friend of ours. Like, he had known Stuart for a long time, or at least, you know, they were connected. And yeah, he can come a few days early and record us, and it'd probably take no time at all. So
just shows how good that dude was.
Steven also says they learned a lot from these sessions. Mic placement, placing them in front of the drum kit in a way that was inspired by billiards positioning, apparently. Putting his guitar stack in a tiny hallway where he didn't have a lot of room. He would play at high volume, so the feedback became musical. And so he was like interactive with the feedback. He taped a tiny mic to the floor as the main sound. That was a moment for me that defined my approach. Oh, I can work with feedback as a musical element deliberately, which has been the thesis of my guitar playing career. So yeah, it's pretty substantial. Like just kind of impromptu, like, hey, Steve's coming in. Do we want to record? It just changed the trajectory of my playing and how I want things to sound. And as I mentioned, they would work with Steve on a later release for Sun. And actually, it's I just bought the Life pedal the other day, and I've been using it non-fucking stop. It's so fun. But they've built that pedal around that album. They kind of
2018, 2019.
I believe so. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that when so side note, I love the fact that your father has to hear that pedal, like just fuck. Take them off one time.
I got headphones.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it sounds great. It's fucking killer. I've just been like playing with it ever since. I think it sounds awesome. So yeah, so that's as far as recording. One thing that definitely sticks out if you look at like the packaging is the artwork. We know that Stephen O'Malley has been a kind of graphic designer in like a lot of different capacities, whether working for bands directly designing their album artwork or working like in like corporate settings in like New York City and abroad. So he has designed a lot of his own artwork for this, including these records. Towers. Stanislav Suslowski, I hope I pronounced that right, is a Polish artist of the 20th century. He developed his own complex, if uncanny, theories on evolution with magical undertones that I found pretty inspiring. It's quite esoteric in a way. The cover design, I designed all the Burning Witch titles, save the split with Goatsnake, is simple. A hand opening a flaming eye. It's a common metaphor for insight, enlightenment, or search for it, deeper thought, etc. The ultimate reason why I chose him is because he's one of my personal favorite artists. I even have some tattoos of his drawings.
I agreed.
Yeah.
God.
It's cool. It's like very minimal.
That is correct.
I like the aesthetic of it. It's very simple. It's not an aesthetic that I would instantly think would tie in with a doom or sludge metal project, I think.
And I think that's concurrent with a lot of the projects that maybe Steve and Greg to an extent are even involved with. Like if you look at some of the early bits of artwork for a lot of, even some of the Sun artwork, it's like very almost religious to an extent.
Sure.
Like it has this kind of overtone to it with a lot of the artwork, aside from maybe like one early Goatsnake record, which if you ever look that album artwork up, it's just like, this is in California. Why does this have this on it? But like it's there. That's kind of like the Southern Lord thing too. I think some of those early releases had a lot of these like almost biblical kind of stylings on it. Like if you look at the first release of Dope Smoker, which was called Jerusalem, again, it's got these differing kind of stylings of artwork on it. But yeah, it is different for a band that sounds this way. Again, you hit the nail on the head. It's a very primitive sounding, almost like Celtic Frost, maybe early Celtic Frost has that kind of like pushed vibe of like, it's just straight from the hip and the gut. This is what we got.
Yeah. There's a couple quotes here. This recording symbolizes the momentous kinetic violence in the songwriting added to the uncanny timing, rhythm, and performance. There's also
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought of that record.
There's also a quote from Steven that says, Towers is definitely the more terrestrial version of Burning Witch, sounds and ideas in a more straightforward way. Yeah, I think it's great. I think, it's 4 songs: Sacred Predictions, Country Doctor, Tower Place, Sea Hag. I think Dylan's right. I think there are definitely some kind of Sabbath and kind of like early traditional elements, while like, Sea Hag is like this fucking dirge, and like the way that Edgy is like delivering his vocals during that is like so gut wrenching. Like it sounds like it genuinely sounds like
Yeah.
But it sounds like truly like this person is anguished. I know we've like talked about people who are able to do that on record, but like this is clearly a person who is like struggled and is going through some shit and channeling it directly into their art.
There are images of two grown men sitting in a lighthouse in black and white, screaming at each other, hammered while this is playing. You liked me lobsters, didn't you? But I want to state something that has been the topic of many jokes since we started talking about this. An extended play is a musical recording that contains more tracks than a single, but fewer than an album. Contemporary EPs generally contain up to 8 tracks and have a playing time of 15 to 30 minutes. So technically, lengthwise, it is not an EP, but it's whatever the band desires to call it.
I think so. Yeah, we have talked about this a lot leading up to the episode. I think I even talked with like David from Atrebillis, like on a completely different record, but like, yes, I'm sure you obviously looked up the definition and there like are like standard rules, but I do feel like there is an argument to be made about like what intent is, like what the band intends. Cause like we've listened to some records that bands consider like their full length output.
20 minutes long.
They're 20 minutes long. Like that new Nails record is like what, 18 minutes? It's not even like
it's
20
under
minutes.
20. Yep.
And David, I don't want to speak for him, but he was like, that's not a record to me. That's not a record. Write a full length record. Write 10 more minutes.
Right.
But yeah, the band has said that these are EPs. These should be considered EPs. Swindle shaking his head in agreement. Because he's like, yeah, man, golly.
No, I will never, literally never in my life say a record that is longer than 30 minutes is an EP. It just ain't. It just is not. And I mean, I don't give a fuck how short records are. Like, I have that fucking Ampere record's 10 minutes long. It's on a 10-inch. That's a full length to me, but I'm not gonna call something that's 30 minutes as long as 30 minutes. I'm not gonna call it an EP.
Okay, interesting.
And the number of songs also doesn't matter because, like, the fucking Sumac record from last year has like 4 songs and it's an hour and something long, right?
Right. We've gotten Bellwitch records that are like 1 or 2 songs that are a full length release or whatever. I'll extend this to whoever's listening.
Leave it to the listener.
I'll put a poll on this. You can comment below no matter where you are. Do you think, what is your definition of an EP or a full-length release? Do you find that these are EPs? Do you find them to be full-length albums? I would love to hear from you. What do you think about that? Comment below, enter the poll, whatever.
I also ain't gonna call Jar of Flies an EP either.
That's
a
true.
fucking record.
It's a record.
It's longer than some records for sure.
It is.
Speaking of EPs, Riff.Canyon.Dreams, sophomore and final EP recorded September 1997, or the autumnal equinox, 1997, also at Robert Lang Studios in Seattle. So late September 22nd. Don't know.
Still don't believe this. And
I think these are certainly added after the fact.
And I am still loving the idea of them talking to this guy, booking time again with the farmer's fucking almanac open. Yep. Like when is the autumnal equinox this year?
When did the crops yield for
They watched the fucking Wicker Man and they were just like,
yep, gotta do it.
Let's do it.
They had to go out and ask the children of the corn, which
Malachi.
The best day to
Malachi, what do we need to do? All right, we got you. Send Edgy in.
This was originally released by Merciless Records on LP in 1998, before being included on the crippled Lucifer comp. So during this time, there was some change in the lineup. You still have Stuart, Stephen, and Edgy, but John Boggy Sykes did return back to his home of Leeds, England, and he was replaced by Brad Moen. So this was another person I believe that Stuart knew and brought in. So there is like kind of a slight change in sound, I believe. But Brad Moen, he kind of grew up playing in like some bands around the area, and especially in Portland, Oregon. One in particular called Sweaty Nipples. I come from a line of horrible band names, is what he says.
Oh, I mean, okay, all right. He at least gets it. Like,
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, there's quite a few, but that one was in a quote. Now Edgy has mentioned like he thinks that Brad is like a genuine person and a great artist. However, he does mention that with Brad on drums, we took on a more conceptual, less sludgy feel. At the time, I did not like this change, but now I can see that it was a precursor to today's drone scene, is what he states.
It certainly is more straightforward.
100%. You can hear it too. Like it 100%. I think this EP sounds like proto drone. Like I think this is where you don't get bands that hit that drone territory without something like this. Because I mean, for drone music, what was there back at this point? You know, maybe some of the electronic acts, like I know Throbbing Gristle did a ton of like drone-esque stuff throughout their career, and many bands that I'm not privy to and artists that are art that I am not intelligent enough to understand. But there's a ton of that stuff that happened. But when it comes to the metal end of it, it's like this Doom for me kind of when it becomes more drone, that's where I kind of lose my attention with it.
I think you have Earth. Earth was
Yep.
like
Thank you. Yes.
So that
Yep.
would probably
Thank
be
you.
the big one.
Yep.
I mean, Sun. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, but
Mhm.
like Sun started as Mars, which was a
Yep.
Earth cover band, which
Right.
is insane to think about. But they started, you know, kind of worshiping bands like that and the Melvins. They wanted to be like those kind of like early records from those bands. So I would say that, you know, definitely like a band like Burning Witch falls into that, and Sun, of course. But yeah, I think you had like, and it's all rooted in this area, this Pacific Northwest, with bands like that. But yeah, I would say that whereas maybe like Jamie was playing some pretty unique stuff. Yeah. I'm not saying that Brad is a slouch by any means, because I'm sure it's definitely hard to. I think it's sometimes harder to play music at this tempo in a lot of ways, but it is more straightforward, I will say.
I want to say I really thoroughly enjoy the quote from Brad. Yeah, I also played in a band called Burning Witch for 3 shows and made the most money there. They actually rose up to become legendary. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
I wonder if maybe I don't know.
Maybe the reunion shows or something.
They did do a couple of those, but then I don't know if maybe does he get a check from some of this stuff? I mean, if it's written, all the music's written by the band, maybe he's getting a little
check. The check is just a picture of Pryor or Chappelle laughing.
So yeah, not only a slight change in lineup, but you also get a change in the recording. Aaron Evil, I couldn't really find a lot on his other work. Evil. But yeah, Aaron Evil recorded this record at Robert Lang Studios as well. The artwork also, again, by the same Polish artist. Steven says that's just a collage of a bunch of pseudoscientific acoustic diagrams mixed with Stanislaw Suslowski drawings. And, you know, this Burning Witch icon, I don't remember his name, this amazing photographer, but he did this series of black and white photos on plants, Carl Blossfeld. So I found one of a poppy and did a collage with some Austin Osmond spare automatic drawings. He was an amazing artist that I was very inspired by in many ways at that time, and still appreciate a lot. He goes on to say it was kind of a cross between a punk rock way of making album covers and my collection of occult imagery. I actually got a lot of flack from one of the other guys, I wonder who was in Burning Witch at the time. He was like, "What is this stuff? It has nothing to do with the band." And I was like, "Actually, it has everything to do with the band. As far as I'm concerned, I did all the artwork for the band. I mean, I did all of the art direction, and this is a file that I have in my filing cabinet from that period. I think it's very relative. It shows a little about the mindset behind it." I think a lot of the Burning Witch ones are uneducated. He's talking about the designs. Early interest in acoustic phenomena and also occult phenomena. which I had at the time. That was one of my interests in black metal because I was very interested in occult, which was very tied with black metal at that time. By definition, that's what black metal is. Black metal means satanic metal. Of course, there's a lot of other ways that people have used the tag too, but that's the original, the core definition of it. And that's part of it. Also, just exploring these ideas and exploring art as well, like the artists I mentioned. So, long quote. Sorry about that. Get an idea for what you're looking at, I suppose, there. You know, there's kind of like these contrasting ideas. Edgy, like, there was like a interview he did, I think it's the Sleeping Shaman, where the interviewer was saying that he did hear some of that black metal influence, but then Edgy was like, no, I don't, what are you talking about? There's nothing black metal about it or something like that. But then Steven grew up listening to a lot of that shit, being heavily influenced by it. You see that the artwork also influenced by some capacity. You're drawing inspiration from that stuff. And I will say, I think I hear some of it as well in the chord progressions and the choices.
Very subtly in the chord progressions, which is funny to even say because of how drawn out a lot of this stuff is. But if you shrink it down, it's there. It absolutely is there. You can hear some of the chord voicings for sure. You know, using those standard minor chords in that tuning layered up like that is going to sound massive. I will say, I know it's not the artwork for the EP, but the artwork that's kind of used as the Crippled Lucifer comp has that feel to it. I think it's somebody kind of walking through a field, or at least that's what my eyes depict it as. Kind of reminds me of the Warning album artwork. So like it definitely has this very early kind of nomadic black metal kind of vibe. I could see that for sure. It's not the big grandiose artwork that you're going to see on like an Emperor album, but it definitely has that very early primitive art styling for sure.
Steven says, Rift.Canyon.Dreams always seemed to me to be after the earth was cracked, looking through to the other subspace moments. Really, I think RCD is a much more important work by Burning Witch, even though it suffers in the production aspect versus the previous material. Lyrically, it shifted towards a more important extra-dimensional space when I couldn't tell if Edgy's love-hate songs were about his wife or his habits. Probably both. Stephen O'Malley. We were kind of talking about this, comparing the tracks a little bit. Warning Signs, Stillborn, History of Hell, or otherwise known as Crippled Lucifer, and Communion. It's weird. It's like, I love the drum performance on the first record. Mm-hmm. I do think this one has a little bit more movement to it in some capacity. I don't know. There's just like things about both records that I feel like it exists on. He did it. And here, I mean, they're records. Doesn't mean it's full length.
Yeah, I know. But he said it.
There are things that exist on either release that I wish would almost like wondering if the band would have released or gone on to put out more records, like how it would have gone. Would it have gone more in this aspect? I don't know. But like comparing the two, like there are things about this that I like more than the other. But then again, like some of my favorite tracks are on Towers and vice versa. So I don't know. It's, how do you think comparing the two? I know we're going to get more into it in the second part of the series, but
personally, I like the first one more.
Yeah. Any particular reason why? Or
I think the drumming makes the songs more interesting. It's like especially in like Country Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the space between like all of the chords, he's just fucking, the drummer is just
he's
fucking
filling
like,
it in,
doing like a improv solo in between every fucking chord. It's crazy. Like the shit he was doing.
It's I think, yeah, maybe more Bill Ward kind of feel kind of to it, and instead of more of like this straightforward approach.
Warpig's parts the entire time.
There were points on this part where I'm like, man, it would have been cool to hear some of these like new phrasings and some of these riffs with the backing of that drummer. I think that would have certainly improved this, but no disrespect to Brad. I'm sure he's a great drummer. Just like, yeah, that was an aspect about Towers I really enjoyed.
there's something about the riffs on the second one that really tie in for me. I have a hard time with drone. I just do, because my brain can't fucking fathom it, because my head's just like, play something. That's just where my brain goes. I will say the first EP definitely sounds more like Sabbath. In a nutshell, it's definitely there. Whereas this one definitely has that more kind of barren, extreme, like this is doom and drone at its purest form, and this is what you're getting.
So that's the one you like more? The one
because of some of the riffs that are on it, because of how the chord voicings and everything on this one. I see myself going back to the second one a little bit more. I doubt thoroughly that I actually go back to these releases as a whole and listen to them. But that second one is the one that in particular stuck out to me, which is kind of odd because of my brain when it comes to like drone and doom. But I think it's because of Edgy's vocals, honestly. Just the sounds overall, in general. Honestly, my favorite tracks on the comp we aren't even discussing, because they're these other things, and it's just, I could see where they were going, and it does sound a little bit more bleak on this one to me, and maybe that's why it really just like hit. And maybe I was just in that mood when I was listening to these of like, okay, not that the first one is unenjoyable by any means, because I do kind of like the Sabbath boogie kind of thing that's going on with the different half notes, and I like very much the drums actually carrying the song, filling it in, going, okay, it's doom, but there's still stuff going on, so pay attention, please. Whereas with this, something about it just hit the right way and at the right time, and it was like, all right, this makes a little bit more sense to me in the long run.
This is like you with grindcore. You're like, I don't like grindcore, but the grindcore I do like is the craziest grindcore in the fucking world. And you're like, I don't really like drone and doom, but the drone and doom I do like is the
most drone. Hey, if you're gonna make me listen to drone, you better fucking do it right. Like, and they did it. It's like they did it right. Like, I've listened to Earth 2, and I went, all right, this is good.
God. Yeah, that's like,
yeah, like it's 45 minutes of just
there ain't
noise.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, that's funny.
And when you look at Earth later with the transition that band made and the progression, it's almost like this weird droney country group. And it's got all these like slap steels and everything in it, and these acoustic instruments. It's so much more interesting to me. But that first Earth or second Earth release, Earth 2, God. It's like, all right, it's drone.
A guitar.
It's just the amp humming sometimes, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
He's just leaning it up front. Kurt, watch this.
So, again, not really much history after here from 1997. They did record they were on basically a public access show, 29 Live in February of 97. This is like the only known actual video of the band. Edgy mentions that he is like fucking out of his mind high while recording this. But it's a fucking wild performance. And if this is like any fraction to he says this was a good one, but not like what the real Burning Witch would be like fucking earth shattering kind of world ending. I couldn't imagine being in the room and watching that guy just fucking kind of snake around stage and do what he does. It's pretty bonkers.
It makes me think of the found footage of Amon playing on the public access show pre-Deicide, what they were called before that, and they're in the fucking studded armor for some reason, and they're just playing some Florida public access show at probably 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and it's how does this happen? Only in the late 80s and early 90s was this allowed to happen.
There's going to be some fucking band 15 years from now that was yeah, we played our only performance on the Chris Gethard show when it was public access only.
Again, another quote from Steven. Burning Witch played live and recorded for about 3 years with no recognition. It seems that only today, 3 years after the band is split, that the reciprocation of our efforts is being realized and recognized. So yeah, not long after their performance on public access and kind of playing live, they broke up in around like 97, 98. There are some differing opinions on why that is. Edgy 59 states that Stephen O'Malley left to move. He went to Europe to work for a label,
Misanthropy
Records, as their art director, kind of doing various covers for various bands. So he lived there for a while. Some other members, I couldn't find like a direct quote or anything like that, but Edgy 59 had also worked on like another project called Sinistar, not long, like almost like directly after this project ended. And so there have been members who have stated that that was the reason why he left to go join that project as well. So that was pretty much it. Edgy had said like, you know, they had already lost one original member. If they lost another one, there wasn't really like any point. They felt like they couldn't recreate what made, you know, kind of the initial inception of this band so great. So they couldn't recreate that. So they just kind of went their separate ways and worked on various other projects. Like, as I mentioned, Greg, he moved to LA, did Goatsnake and did Southern Lord. Steven lived in Europe for a little while to do kind of, you know, this art director position with
Misanthropy.
He did relocate to LA at one point. I believe this is where Greg and Steven start Sun, or Mars, this like Earth cover project, and eventually kind of morphed into Sun. Steven also moved to New York to kind of work in more like of a corporate setting, I guess, for like graphic design. It's here where he meets like James Plotkin and they start Canate and a variety of other projects. I don't believe Steven even lives in the country anymore. I'm almost fairly certain he lives in Europe, maybe in France. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's that. Stuart and Brad, I know in like 2003 started a project called AVSA. Actually, Stuart was also affiliated with Sun and Goatsnake pretty early on. Stuart's on the demos and for Sun and Void as well. He's also on Goatsnake's Flower of Disease. I don't know if there's any issues with that. He is no longer affiliated with those projects. Something about like Metal Archives putting like he wasn't credited on some of those projects. That's what I saw. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it is what it is. So yeah, like a lot of these guys have stayed creative in various projects, some more related to Burning Witch than others. After they broke up, I think they were able to reunite for some shows in California in the late 90s, but that was pretty much it. I think they kind of said, yeah, the magic was pretty much gone. That was it. And it wasn't until that's what
the BB King song is about, right? The Thrill is Gone.
The Thrill is Gone. It's
the
about
Burning Witch reunion.
Yeah. I thought it was just about some old hound dog laying there just waiting at the bottom for his Kraft mac and cheese.
Back in 2010, there was Roadburn, which still exists. Definitely a bucket list for me today, but they had invited Tom G. Warrior of Celtic Frost Hellhammer fame to kind of curate an evening of different performances. They invited Burning Witch to kind of reunite. There are some people pointing the fingers at why that maybe didn't happen. Some say that Stephen O'Malley just kind of put the kibosh on that. Thor's Hammer, however, did perform at the Roadburn Festival.
Hey, Tom, BW can't play, but I got this other project that you might have heard of that I bet we can get here real quick.
Yeah, they did perform. And you know, I think they did put out like a live record through Southern Lord after that. But and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could necessarily blame him if you just like don't want to like play with certain people anymore. Yeah. Maybe it's just like, hey, let's leave that in the past, or what have you, for whatever reasons. Like, again, I'm just some dude and I'm just kind of interpreting the information as I read it. But yeah, there was an opportunity that just didn't happen, and we're kind of at this point now. So like, more recently, as we mentioned before, Southern Lord re-released these kind of reissues of these records, Towers and Rift, Canyon, and Dream. I think they even said, let's see, Southern Lord brings these 2 milestone albums to vinyl formats. Once again, Towers has been remastered from the half-inch master tape lost until this version by Mel Detmer, and will be available on black, opaque red, and opaque gold. Rift.Canyon.Dreams will be available on black, cloudy clear, and I don't know if I really need to get in that, but they're available again, so you can get them. They'd been out of print for quite some time, and Dylan has mentioned how much he enjoys them and turns them on quite frequently.
Yep, every morning.
Buy these 2-sided 12-inch EPs, because that is the format that EPs famously come on.
So that's the story of Burning Witch, pretty much. A band that existed for a very short amount of time, but I guess through reissues and their kind of mystique and the people involved, they've seen a bit of a resurgence. We wanted to take this opportunity. We were thinking of doing this all in one episode, but Swindle had
graciously
begged me to split it up, which I agree. It would have been a very, very long episode. So we decided to make this 2 parts covering this band's history. And then next week, with very, very special guest, ALN Mizmor, we'll get to talk about Crippled Lucifer, which I remember seeing this Decibel article a few years back where he kind of lists the 5 most important records to him. This was pretty much at the top of the list. I think Ben from Blood Incantation had shown him this record, and he basically said it's one of the most evil things he's ever heard, if I'm getting the quote right.
I think he actually makes that same statement that Gilead Media doc as well. I think he brings that up there.
I'm sure we'll talk about that. But Mizmor and Hell, also 2 fucking bleak and evil sounding projects coming together to release Illuvian at the beginning of April through Gilead Media. It's going to be one of a few releases that are kind of closing out the label. But we're going to be talking about that collaboration together, and then we're going to be talking about this record. So get excited, because we're going to be talking more about Burning Witch next week.
Get excited slowly. Slowly.
All right. This is that point of the episode where we like to share some things we've been listening to, some things we'd like to recommend. I'm going to start with Imperial Triumphant Goldstar, which was just released. It is released. Yep. A new album, number 6. Their follow-up to Spirit of Ecstasy a couple of years back. It's out now on Century Media Records. I've had the opportunity to spend some time with it, and I fucking love it. This band is bonkers. They write some very unique, interesting shit. Their stage presence is fucking unreal. I think this record does for me what Alphaville did. However, I'm not saying Alphaville's certainly much longer. But I feel this basically takes all of the aspects of that and just kind of trims the fat. It's a more straightforward record, if you can call Imperial Triumphant that. But I love this record. It's got some great guests: Dave Lombardo, Tomas Mashuga from Meshuggah, Yoshiko Ohara from Bloody Panda, who I think also has a tie into Stuart Dahlquist as well. That kind of tie it back into Burning Witch. But last record to be recorded at the Minigroth Studios with Colin Marston. And they are currently on the Decibel Magazine tour, which by the time this comes out, I will have seen in Chicago with Mayhem, Mortis, and New Skeletal Faces. So I'm excited for that. Dylan, what have you been listening to, bud?
I have one. Since we've been in this doom and gloom world here recently, in many aspects. If you're a fan of the band Windhand, you're familiar with their vocalist Dorthia Cottrell. She released a solo folk album through Relapse in 2023 that, unbeknownst to me, so I check that record out, and it's fucking great. It's dark. It is folky. It's very bleak, very simplistic, but check that out. The album's called Death Folk Country. I mean, if you're a fan of her work with Windhand, you're going to be a fan of this. Definitely, I don't want to compare it to Chelsea Wolfe because it really doesn't sound like that, but maybe in the vein of those early Chelsea Wolfe records, just a person in very minimal instrumentation, but it's really fucking dark. It's bleak. Great record, great voice.
My only recommendation is from my fair city, Louisville, Kentucky. I'm gonna go with the newest single, The Holy Net by Young Widows, from their, I guess at the time of the release of this episode, the album will have come out. On March 21st, the album's Power Sucker via Temporary Residence Limited. We saw Young Widows with Thou in Louisville. They haven't released an album since Old Wounds. It's been like 10 or 11 years. The shit they played, I think when we saw them, the only single they had released was called Bullshit, and they played that one. I thought they were really fucking good.
The Holy Net track though has like that's a king shit track. The other two singles that were released, like Calling Bullshit, The Darkest Side, great tracks, but something about this one in particular was like, oh, okay, like this has got my attention.
Yeah, it's good to have Young Widows around. Evan's been doing his solo J Jail stuff for a while now, but it's good to have Young Widows being heavy, and I guess J Jail like running alongside it separately, because I think he's playing Louisville sometime soon.
I think Young Widows is coming up to Chicago at some point too.
They're playing with Kowloon, and that's right. Kowloon is really fucking good.
Those are they playing those Coalesce shows?
I think Kowloon is at least.
I know that, but I didn't know if.
Yeah, that's a separate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, check that out. It's down below. You can listen to those. You can also check out our official playlist, Riffs on Repeat, Spotify, Hits from the Crypt on Apple Music. Dylan also does reviews that you can find on our channel, reviews from the Dilbozer Den. You can follow us, Instagram and Twitter, Riff Worship Pod. Email us at riffworshippod@gmail.com. Fun episode. I'm glad we got to do this. Thank you for humoring me. This is my birthday thing. I'm now a 31-year-old man, and I just like to take things a little slow from time to time. So we'll be back next week with Ms. Moore discussing the compilation Crippled Lucifer. Until then, for myself, for Dylan, for Swindle, we'll be back next week with something else. See ya. Bye.
Bye.